Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack what is honestly one of the most frustrating, universally baffling mysteries of the human experience. Look, we live in an era where we have unprecedented access to information, right? We stream these profound lectures, we read groundbreaking data, we consume just incredibly inspiring content every single day, and yet, that knowledge rarely leads to actual lasting change in our behavior. Have you ever wondered why that is? Why does all this amazing information just completely fail to move the needle in our daily lives? Well, let's find out.
I want to start off with a bit of a relatable confession here. I know that you, just like me, have watched some really inspiring talks by brilliant experts. I've watched Sir Ken Robinson make this deeply moving case for an education system that nurtures creativity, and I literally agree with every word. But I haven't done a single thing to actually make that a reality. I've listened to Brené Brown passionately describe the power of vulnerability, but, I'm still pretty guarded. I watched Amy Cuddy explain how body language shapes who we are, but I definitely didn't strike a power pose before starting this explainer. And on a daily basis, I don't get enough sleep, I sit at my desk for hours without moving, and I still buy bottled water. Seriously, what are we all doing?
This famous thought by Mahatma Gandhi really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures this massive disconnect we're looking at today. There's this huge gap between the data input we consume, all the books, the documentaries, the well-meaning advice, and the behavioral output we actually perform. We know the facts. We totally know what we should be doing, but we just keep doing our bad habits anyway. So, what exactly is broken here?
Well, that brings us to our first section, the broken metaphor, and why your brain isn't a computer.
Okay, let's dive into this disconnect. For a really long time, we've relied on this specific metaphor to understand ourselves. The idea that the human brain is essentially a computer. But think about it. If we were actually computers, just throwing more data and facts at a problem would fix it. But computers are, well, they're lifeless machines. They deal purely in facts. They just execute static programs. And frankly, they don't care. A computer doesn't care about its self-image, it doesn't care if it looks cool, and it doesn't crave a sense of control. Human beings, on the other hand, we are dynamic, warm-blooded, messy creatures. We're constantly pushed and pulled by changing desires and perceptions. We absolutely do not process the world through cold data. We process it through meaning.
Moving right along to section 2, facts versus truth. And guys, this brings us to the famous Patagonian toothfish story.
To really understand why all this knowledge doesn't automatically lead to behavioral change, you have to hear this bizarre story from 1977. So back in the day, fishermen considered the Patagonian toothfish to be absolute junk. It was just a throwaway fish. Now, if a computer were given the facts about this ugly, menacing-looking creature, it would never suddenly desire to eat it just because someone swapped out its name on a menu. But in 1977, this fish wholesaler named Lee Lance realized that humans aren't computers. He sensed that people would actually love the mild taste of the fish, but they would hate the factual name. So what did he do? He rebranded that exact same fish as Chilean sea bass. And this is crucial. It brilliantly illustrates our core focus today. The facts of the fish didn't change one bit, but the truth, the appealing, upscale story that buyers associated with it, changed entirely. Human desire isn't triggered by cold facts, it's triggered by our personal truths.
The brilliant screenwriter Robert McKee summed this up just beautifully. There's a profound difference between objective reality and the internalized meaning that we assign to our experiences. If you want to solve problems, if you actually want to change your behavior or someone else's, you have to be intimately aware of the difference between a fact and a truth. Let me give you a concrete example. Here is a scientific fact. You and I are currently on a giant, living sphere of rock, rocketing through space faster than a speeding bullet, orbiting a massive ball of fire. That is an absolute, undeniable fact. But is it your truth? No way. If that literal fact were your everyday truth and you defined yourself as a fleeting, short-term passenger on a chaotic space rock, it would completely alter how you live every single second of your day. Instead, our truth is that we're grounded, permanent residents, just going about our daily routines. Facts simply don't govern our daily behavior. Our internalized truths do. Which brings us to section 3, the 3 deciding factors. Let's look at what actually drives our behavior. So if raw facts and data aren't the things calling the shots, what is? Sure, we might occasionally act on a fact. Like, rushing to buy a coffee because you heard the price is about to go up. But even then, we only do it if it aligns with our personal truths. In reality, our daily actions are constantly pushed and pulled by 3 primary behavioral drivers: aesthetics, control, and identity. Let's break these down real quick.
First up, aesthetics. This is usually where we start in interacting with our environment. It's our innate desire for sensory pleasure and stimulation. It's the look, the feel, the taste of things. We are naturally drawn to beautiful, fun, and entertaining objects, whether that's the incredibly sleek design of a new iPhone or the stunning visuals of a summer blockbuster. Much like bees are instinctively drawn to a field exploding with colorful flowers, we are constantly being pulled by the enticing aesthetic stimuli all around us.
Second, we have control. Unlike simpler creatures, humans have this amazing capacity to construct the future in our minds, right? Which means we constantly want to predict and steer our journeys. We want to measure and optimize absolutely everything. We track the calories we burn, we log our charitable contributions, we meticulously plan out our travel itineraries down to the minute. Why? Because the illusion of control makes us feel empowered. It makes us feel engaged and autonomous in our own lives.
But here's the funny thing, our desire for control and measurement can so easily override actual facts. I absolutely love this story. There was this guy spotted at the gym lying flat on his back, just vigorously shaking his hand in the air. When someone rushed over to ask if he was okay, he was like, "Yeah, I'm perfectly fine." He was just shaking his fitness tracker to add fake steps so he could upload the data and impress his friends on the internet. Think about that. He didn't care about the factual data of his health, he cared deeply about the story he was telling and what others thought of him.
And that leads us perfectly into Section 4, the power of identity. This is the ultimate catalyst for change.
Because while aesthetics draw us in, and that sense of control makes us feel good and empowered, neither of those is enough to spark massive, lasting behavioral change. As this quote says so well, information doesn't move us. Desire moves us, and desire is entirely ignited by the stories we tell ourselves about who we are. That faulty computer metaphor we talked about, it tricks us into thinking that if we just get more information or maybe present the data in a more persuasive way, people will finally change. But it all comes down to our identity.
To prove just how powerful identity really is, take a look at this fascinating 2013 study from Stanford University involving virtual superheroes. The researchers put participants in virtual reality. Some were just passive passengers riding in a virtual helicopter. But others? They were given the ability to fly under their own power, with their arms extended, exactly like Superman. And the incredible finding here? The people who flew like Superman in VR were significantly more likely to help other people in the real, physical world afterwards. Their inner experience inspired them to embody the role of a hero without them even consciously realizing it.
And look, this isn't just some quirky VR theory. It is a universal truth of human behavior. We naturally embody our roles and our values. We live out the stories we adopt. When you zip up a leather jacket and get on a motorcycle, you feel like a rebel. When you grab a hot cup of coffee and sit down in front of a blank page, you imagine yourself as a creative author. And on the flip side, sadly, if we tell ourselves the story that we are old and worn out, we biologically and behaviorally become old and worn out.
J.R.R. Tolkien once wrote that a single dream is more powerful than 1,000 realities. Those 1,000 realities? Those are the raw facts. That's the cold data. We have been hypnotized by this dangerous illusion that simply learning realities will somehow agitate us into changing our lives. But they won't, because we aren't rational, unfeeling machines. We are passionate, imaginative creatures, and we are moved by invisible stories and inspiring visions of our future.
So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final thought. If you want to change your habits, if you want to improve your life, or even change the world around you, stop waiting for the right piece of factual data to finally motivate you. It is literally never going to happen. Instead, you need to look inward right now and ask yourself, who am I and what story am I actually living?